Hi. I wanted to make a really quick video here discussing what I thought of the commissioner's ruling on ineligible baseball players to be considered for, frankly, the only value is to be considered for the Hall of Fame. I think there's a lot of fat cutting that has to be just cut out of the conversation to even make sense of why this happened in the first place. A lot of this just comes down. It's for Pete Rose. Frankly, this is for Pete Rose. It's not for anybody else. It's only for Pete Rose. Pete Rose wanted it. Pete Rose's family wanted it. Uh, just there's really no other sense to the conversation other than it's for Pete Rose. It's strictly a Pete Rose rule, is what it is. There's nothing wrong with that. I personally think that it's a good thing that Pete is going to finally get his consideration for the Hall of Fame. I mean, he is, after all, the all-time hits king. Um, and I don't think that makes much sense to me at all to keep him out of it. And I only have a couple problems with uh, I only have a couple problems with what the ruling allows and basically what it says is allowed to happen. I really don't like the idea of allowing gamblers to get themselves into the Hall of Fame. I think that's like the one thing that's a huge no-no is you just cannot allow people that have gambled on the sport to be a part of the Hall of Fame. That's just one thing that you just cannot do. Um, I personally believe that you can't you I'm trying to make sure the stream is working correctly with the microphone. You just cannot allow people like Joe Jackson to get into the Hall of Fame. Now that might be a really weird thing to hear me say because again, I'm a massive baseball fan, but I'll be the first guy to tell you when I went to the Joe Jackson Museum, I didn't like him. Good. Okay, microphone is working. I'm not a fan of Joe Jackson. I'm not. I'll be one of the first guys to tell you that. I'm not. I will die on that hill to tell you that I am not a fan of Joe Jackson. The history books have always looked at Joe Jackson as a stupid, illiterate person from the South who never wore shoes, highly talented ball player, but just really not someone who had any brain in his head. And I think that's the furthest thing from the truth because when I went down there to Dan's, I don't remember his last name, but Dan's Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum, I learned quite a bit about him just from walking through his house and seeing some photos that were very intimate of him and his wife. I don't think they had kids. Him and his wife and the way they lived and all that. They were very humble people. However, I know that he wasn't as dumb as a lot of the population make him out to be. I think Joe Jackson knew damn well what he was getting himself into. I know he batted real well. I know he did good, but there is a written contract out there that had his ink on it, stating that he was in line to throw the World Series in 1919 in order to win money for the mob, the mafia, for the gamblers of the series, and that's the worst thing you can do for the integrity of the ball game. And I think that's why baseball went and had Kennesaw Mountain Landis come in from the U.S. judicial system to get that all taken care of, to clean that house up. And I didn't make a video right off the rip. There's one YouTuber who I enjoy watching a lot. It's Frank from Hall of Fame autograph collecting. I believe is a YouTube channel. He's excellent, absolutely an amazing YouTuber. Love him to death. He couldn't even get out of work. He was in his car making a video, and there was a lot of emotion to it. And he kind of changed my opinion a little bit on things, but I needed a few days to think. I needed really a few days to think because I've met Pete Rose. My father was the one who made it happen. He was signing autographs here in town, and we had to get down there to go see him because my dad was like, "You're never gonna be able to say like this is." He could like I could never have met Mickey Mantle. I just was too young for it. But if Mickey Mantle was in town, my dad would have taken me to go see Mick. With Pete, it was, you have to go see Pete. We have to go see Pete Rose. And when we got up there and we shook his hand, my dad didn't have much to say to him because he was always an Indians fan. But he did say before we left, he goes, Mr. Rose, and he pointed right at Pete. He goes, Mr. Rose, I think what they've done to you is terrible, and you deserve to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Regardless of anything that you've done in the past, you belong in the Hall of Fame. You're just as good as any of them guys. And Pete told my dad, thank you very much, and he appreciated the kind words, and it was up to God. It was up for time, Father Time, to tell what was going to happen. And I remember watching the interaction. I've seen Pete have that same interaction time and time again afterwards. And it was guilt. It was absolute guilt. There's a reason why he wrote, I'm sorry for betting on baseball on so many baseballs that he signed over the years. And that's because he knew he was damn guilty. And he didn't come clean even until 2011. So with 60 minutes nonetheless. So I think he got screwed. He got screwed with Bart Giamatti's passing. So, him and Giamatti made a deal, and Giamatti died quickly after, and he got screwed. He really did. I believe he belongs in the Hall of Fame. He's the all-time hit king. Did he have a crazy past and all that? Yes, he did. There's a whole bunch of Hall of Famers in that Hall of Fame that just are not the greatest of role models. I mean, there's even rumors of Babe Ruth killing his wife with a fire axe. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff you read about, especially once you get truly invested into the Hall of Fame. There's some crazy things. But I think that's what makes players like Rose and Jackson unique. I've always said that Joe Jackson does not belong in the Hall of Fame because he's a black sheep. If you were to remove his black sheepness from him as a human, from a baseball player, then he's no longer the legend Shoeless Joe Jackson. He's just Hall of Famer Joe Jackson, sitting right next to Hall of Famer Gary Carter or Hall of Famer, you could take a whole Chick Hayfie, being a Hall of Famer doesn't mean you're the greatest of all time. Like, that's something that it shouldn't even be said. Pete Rose is one of the greatest of all time to ever play the game. Joe Jackson is not one of the greatest ball players to ever play the game. Look, nobody alive right now ever got to see him play. That's a fact. Everybody who, unless they're 100 years old now and they're not getting into this conversation, they could care less. They just care about what's for dinner because they don't even remember their name. So I just think that there's no sense in arguing for Joe Jackson. I don't think he'll ever get into the Hall of Fame because he didn't, one, have a long career. The voters now and the writers are so much different now than they used to be, where people like Ross Youngs got in after playing like 9 seasons. You would Koufax is one of those players who no kidding would have gotten the Hall of Fame because of all his baseball milestones. But with him too, he played like 11 or 12 seasons, not that many. So a lot of the times nowadays, a lot of players have to play like at least 14, 15 seasons for them to be considered, especially like Joe Jackson. I mean, he had obviously one of the highest batting averages. I think it might actually even be the highest single season batting average of anybody's lifetime. Absolutely. And, those things are worth mentioning. But then you also have to put Ed Walsh in the same category. Ed Walsh was a Hall of Famer. He's got the all-time ERA, lowest ERA, of all time recorded by all pitchers ever to play the game. But if you were to stack him up in, in a career that would have lasted 22 years, like Nolan Ryan, or 24 seasons, however long Nolan played for, he would never have been the same way. So there's some, Dazzy Vance is the same way. Dazzy Vance is another one of those Hall of Famers where, he didn't get his start until he was 32 years old. He made the Hall of Fame because he had some milestones. He was a really good pitcher for the time that he had. And that's the whole thing about it, is that there's so many stipulations. And I think a lot of the new writers now, the way that things are, I think we're going to see a little bit tougher of a campaign for Joe Jackson to get into the Hall of Fame. And also, frankly, who the hell's a fan of Joe Jackson? I mean, there's a very, very slim group of people that are, and the people that are, they're pretty quiet. They're pretty quiet, or they're super loud like Dan. But now, hell, you don't even hear anything about him. So it's hard to say. I I also wanted to speak on Rob Manfred himself, and I have to kind of tread lightly here because, again, one of my absolute dreams and the existence of my life is to be able to open that gallery, and I would never be able to have that to be able to do that without a small partnership from MLB. I'm just going to say that point blank and black and white right here is that I'm not always going to side with MLB or the commissioner's decisions. And by the time the gallery opens, I guarantee you Rob Manfred won't even be the commissioner. And Rob Manfred, the next commissioner won't care about what I say about Manfred the same way that, frankly, Manfred didn't care about what Giamatti said or what Landis said or what Bill White said. I think it really just comes down to Rob Manfred, has done a lot to change the ball game over the last, say, 5-10 years than commissioners past have. And that really speaks volumes to Manfred's legacy. I mean, when you look personally from myself, what this really meant was that Manfred went from being the baseball commissioner that like changed the rules, right? There was that lockout where they couldn't get the games going on time. There was like 2 or 3 games for the Rangers, I think, that got kind of screwed over, and it was either 22 or 21. And then, the COVID season, like the shortened COVID season. And then just 2 years ago, when the bases got bigger, the pitch clock came in. The game has changed so much under Manfred. And then for him to have one more little feather in his cap to say, oh, yeah, I lifted the ineligibility list, so when any player who's banned from baseball for life dies, we can consider them for the Hall of Fame. But that's so far out stupid in my mind that he doesn't have the power to do that. Just himself, like a year or two ago when Pete Rose was still alive, he said that he didn't have the power to do it because it was the decision of commissioners past. It's not his choice. But now all of a sudden it is. And you know why? It's because all the big gambling companies are involved with baseball and they're writing checks to MLB. Frankly, Bet365, FanDuel, DraftKings, Barstool, they're all cutting checks to the MLB. So the MLB, the commissioner, the man in charge, no kidding, is going to get up there in front of everybody and say, okay, you know what? The only guys that were ever banned from baseball, most of them are gamblers. And hey, you know what we're going to do? Everybody's able to get in now. Everybody's able to get in. It's not because we have more gambling in baseball than we ever have, but it's now just the time, because Pete Rose needs to get in. Now, they're using Pete Rose as yet again another patsy for the sport of baseball. And that's all Pete Rose ever was a patsy. He was always, frankly, he's one of the greatest of all time. I mean, hit king. Holy smokes. That record probably will never be beat. Frankly, we could sit here and argue that all day until we're blue in the face, but I don't think that record will ever be beat. It was hard enough for him to beat Cobb. So nowadays, players are always getting hurt. People love Mike Trout. Mike Trout can't even break 3,000 hits probably before he retires because he's been hurt so much. So it absolutely kills me that there's no coincidence here that we're seeing more gambling in the sport of baseball. We're seeing more advertising for gambling in the sport of baseball. We're seeing just 2 or 3 years ago, FTX was written across the chest for the umpires, for God's sakes. Cryptocurrency, it's gambling. It's gambling. It's not the S&P 500. It doesn't say S&P 500 or Triple Q. It says FTX. Where's the guy that made FTX now? Sam Bankman-Fried in prison. So Manfred has been an absolutely consequential, I'll say that, very consequential commissioner for the sport of baseball over his tenure as commissioner. I pray to God that the next commissioner lets things lie a little bit more than Rob Manfred has. And I'm not saying that I don't have respect for Manfred whatsoever. I have a bunch of respect for Manfred. He's been very accessible to fans. He's been very accessible to the ball clubs themselves. He's listened to a lot more things. But when I personally myself as a fan, when the whole contract negotiations with the MLB, the Players Association and the MLB, when those couldn't be reached a few years ago, but yet, we were spending all kinds of crazy, not even we, but the MLB was spending all kinds of crazy money abroad on all these programs and things that just do not affect the nation of America. And I just personally myself, I just don't think those are very helpful, especially when you're going to keep baseball from being played, because you have to make the argument that those things have to be. It's just, I don't know. I'm not going to go much further into that. Maybe I'm a little crazy. I doubt that I truly am, but I just think that the new ruling on Pete Rose and Joe Jackson is something that came out of left field. I mean, the last thing I ever expected to read. When my phone went off and I looked down there at it and said, no way. And then I read the article and I was just, I mean, every word that was coming out of my mouth, I was just, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. You're kidding me. I mean, I got Pete Rose. You could see him just up here, like right here. I've got him pointed out right here. It's him sitting there on second base after he got that the hit to pass Cobb with him and Steve Garvey behind him. And I've got, I mean, again, my ball that I had Pete Rose signed for me, I've still got it. I know everybody that had met Pete still has their baseball, that's for sure. But it's so interesting to me that they could go after him for so many years and use him as the image of what not to be in the sport. And then for him to die, not even 365 days later, lift the ban that was basically a Joe Jackson ban, right? And then getting lumped into that, after getting caught gambling on your own team as a manager, getting banned, Giamatti dying, and then he goes his entire life, like his adult life after baseball, like sitting there, I'm sorry about baseball, I should never have done this. Doesn't come clean, doesn't have a come to God moment until 2011 with the public. It's the craziest thing to me that this is where we're at. I don't know. It's a really weird deal. I needed a few days to form an opinion, though, because I'm afraid what this allows is it truly does allow and endorse players in the future to do whatever they please to do without any repercussion other than just having to die to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. Some people don't care. There's a lot of ball players out there. Buck O'Neil, one of the guys who was up for consideration in 2006, massive impact on baseball one way or another, as a player, as a coach. He was up and around baseball his entire life, got screwed. Frankly, Bob Kendrick needs to just say that straight out and just put it to MLB. But of course, he's in the same boat, same canoe as someone like me. He wants to work on something. He's got a gallery, he's got a beautiful museum, but he can't say that outright because Buck told him not to. If it was me, I told him, Buck, you need to just sit down for a second and let me tell how it is. You got screwed, Buck. You got screwed by everybody up there, the writers. You got screwed over by everybody at the Hall of Fame. Everybody screwed you, Buck. And now you're dead. You don't get to see this. And that's just my whole thought process on it, is that Buck got screwed. And he got absolutely screwed. He deserved it. He deserved to get in there while he was still alive. He deserved to see it. He gave a speech. God, I can't remember whose speech he gave, that Hall of Fame induction speech. And he didn't get to have his own. He was dead. He was dead. Now Pete Rose is dead, and he was dead for less than a year, and they're going to say, oh, yeah, he'll get in the Hall of Fame. It'll be in 2027, though. They already tell you when he's getting in. They already tell you he's getting in. That's the craziest thing to me, is that because it's not even going to be like he might get it. Pete Rose is going to get in the Hall of Fame. It's like if they said Barry Bonds is up for eligibility, which he already is, but nobody wants to vote him or Clemens and all those steroid guys, because those guys are in a whole different boat. We're not going to have that conversation right now. But this also sets the precedent for that is, okay, hey, look, we let the cheaters in, we let the gamblers in. How about we go ahead and let Barry Bonds in? How about we go ahead and let Roger Clemens in? Kurt Schilling. Let's go ahead and let Eric Gagne in. Let's go ahead and just let everybody who ever screwed the game baseball. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa. Screw it, man. They were great for baseball. People loved watching them. That's the argument, is that it allows filth to enter the halls. It does. Because again, I might have taken a little dig at Gary Carter and a little bit of a dig at Chick Hayfie, but Babe Ruth is still in the same company as George High Pockets Kelly. Still in the same company as, Travis Jackson. I mean, some of the worst Hall of Famers ever to be inducted in the Hall of Fame ever because of cronyism through Frank Frisch. And for it all to be the way that it just blows me away. I don't know. But then also, that's the other thing, is the Hall of Fame is just really a weird microcosm of baseball. What's right and what's wrong? There's a lot to it, but I don't know. That's what makes the sport the greatest sport in the world. Is that we could sit here and have a conversation about the something that happened over 100 years ago, and I'm going to get worked up over it. Something that I wasn't even born. You could take my life and multiply it by seven times or so, and that's when it happened. And I'm sitting here getting upset about it. I'm not really necessarily getting upset about it. It's just that it kind of hurts. My whole life is the Hall of Fame. My whole life is the players of the Hall of Fame, the people who really contributed to everything here. There's so much story. Every man has a different story. And I think that's what I find so interesting. So to put people in there, and I've been to Joe Jackson's gravesite, for God's sakes. I've stood there right at his feet, and again, I've been through his house. It's just the craziest thing I saw the ball field where he used to play at the cotton mill that he used to work at, or the textile mill where Connie Mack came and found him. It's the craziest thing in the world to me that we're sitting here talking about him going to the Hall of Fame. I never would have thought that would have ever been a thing. Never. Because that's not what makes Joe Jackson special. What makes Joe Jackson special is the black sheep effect of him being banned from baseball for life for being part of something that maybe he did or did not understand. I frankly don't think he's as dumb as people give him credit for. Did he know how to read and write? No. Did he run a successful business, a liquor store down in Greenville, South Carolina? Yes. Did he run it well enough that he could walk to work every day? He did that by design. Yes. He owned one car in his lifetime. It was a big-ass Packard. He did that by design. I just think that he's not as dumb as people give him credit for. Yes, his wife ran the books. Yes, his wife did this and that and that. But I don't think that, I don't think he was as dumb as people give him credit for. He could still speak. He's not mute or just retarded. I mean, he's slow, but he's not gone. He's not sitting there drooling in a straight jacket. He's a ball player. He's a normal person like you and me. He just couldn't read or write. That's the thing, is I wish that we could have these ball players today just stand here in front of you and just go, "Hi, I'm Joe Jackson. It's nice to meet you. Don't know how to read or write. Oh, I understand. You want me to throw the World Series? Sweet. I'll still bat over 300, but that's because everybody batted 300 back then." My whole thing, I just don't know. I don't know. That's my opinion on it. There's a lot to it. I don't really know what else to say about it. It's just it's an interesting deal. I'm a big fan of Pete Rose. I really am. I think he's very important for the story of baseball. So is Joe Jackson. But I think it's just kind of important to keep them out. But I don't know. I go back to what my father said to Pete Rose was, "I don't care what they say about you or what you did, but you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame because you're just as good as any of them guys are." And he was. He was. He does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame based off of his playing career. But then you have a whole bunch of that, doing the just breaking the number one rule that you're not supposed to break. It sucks. I don't know. That's why I'm not commissioner of baseball. Rob Manfred had a tough decision to make. It was a decision he didn't want to make. He knew it was a catch-22. He knew that if he did it, if he reversed the decision, or if he hadn't reversed the decision, he was screwed. People are going to give him shit for it. And, here we are. I just hope that this does not allow more betting in the future. We just lost Pat Hoberg, probably one of the greatest umpires, probably the single greatest umpire that baseball had, just a few months ago, to betting. I mean, the umpires, it's still going on. That's what I'm saying, is it's still going on. People are still gambling on these ball games. And it's pretty hard to watch a ball game now when Bet365's logo is plastered on a 12-foot wall, on the outfield wall, right behind your center fielder. And you just kind of sit there and wonder, man, I wonder if he even knows what's going on. Because that center fielder just knows what's going on. He knows that it's all a bunch of gambling bullshit nowadays, and that's all it is. And it's I don't know. It used to be taboo. It used to be really taboo, but now it's so easily accessible to everybody. I've done it myself. People have ruined their lives off of it. I had like some free bets for signing up for it when it first came legal here in Ohio, and never again. I'm not a fan of it. It honestly ruined the game for me, and I think that's where we're headed. Is we're headed down a path that's going to ruin the pastime, and not just baseball, because this opens up the door for everything. Baseball's been very big about allowing what they think is right, and then other sports following suit, and that's exactly it. Is monkey see, monkey do, and I think that this could really allow the NFL, maybe soccer, uh, basketball, for God's sakes, to allow things like this. I mean, it's not a good precedent to set in sports in America. It's not. So who knows? I'm game for it. I've made my investments. I've got Pete Rose out the ass. No Joe Jackson, but you know, I would start buying Pete Rose autographs now if you'd like, though. If you're thinking about it, if you're on the fence, buy a Pete Rose autograph. It's gonna be a future Hall of Famer autograph anyway. Should have had it before he died because he was just that important anyway. But yeah, that's the poop, guys. Sorry it took me a couple days to even make an opinion on this. It's a interesting deal that I never thought we'd ever have to talk about. But yeah, that's the poop. I didn't want to. I got like literally, I'm not even joking. I got like 15 people that messaged me or tweeted at me yesterday about, hey, or 2 days ago, they were like asking me, hey, what do you think about this? But here's my answer. It's crazy. It's insane. Never saw it coming. Not a good thing for baseball. I don't think it's the darkest day for baseball, but I just think that there's a lot of repercussions that are going to come from this that we don't understand yet. And it's going to all be because of not now, not 5 years from now, not 20 years from now, but 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 200 years from now. What will this do to the sport of baseball? That's what I'm curious about. But that's a long ways away and I'll be dead. So not my problem. I won't even give a shit, to be honest with you. So, all right, well, take care, guys. We'll talk to you later on. See ya.